Please welcome to the stage attorney, CPA, and the motion capture behind Mortal Kombat, and National Ace Ambassador, Donald Kilbasa.
Is my mic on, or is that too loud? I normally don't use a mic because I'm that loud. How you doing, DC? Guys, I am so honored to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. I want to take a shout out and recognize the big boss, Karen Ang, and National Ace. Also want to take a moment to give a shout out to Ace Next Gen. Where are you guys at? Guys, that's why we're here. We're here to pave a new path for the next generation. We're so grateful and honored that you guys are here, and I'm so grateful and honored to be here with you guys. Guys, my name is Donald Kilbasa. I'm an attorney CPA, and when I don't practice law, I'm the martial arts motion capture model behind Mortal Kombat. Many of you guys have my first book in your gift bag. My next book drops November 15th. And I am here, grateful and honored, to introduce our next video speaker. It's my pleasure to introduce Representative Amata Radewagen, American Samoa's third member of Congress. She is the first woman to serve in the U.S. House of Representatives from American Samoa, the first Republican woman of Samoan descent in Congress, and the most senior Republican elected federal officer holder of Asian Pacific heritage. And here's the video from her. Thank you. No, he'll kick my ass. Here, I'll sit here. You sit there. I'll sit here. Hey guys, we're experiencing a little technical difficulties. Really quick, I want to do a story if you'll give me the opportunity. Is that okay? Yeah. Guys, I used to live in a place in China called the Shaolin Temple with the monks. And they told me a story there that I'm going to tell you guys. And it's dedicated to Ace Next Gen and National Ace. You guys ready? Yeah. There was an old farmer. The farmer was out there farming his land old school. The son came out and said, "Dad, there are new, better ways to do that farming. We have brand new technology that will make your job easier." The father shrugged his shoulders. Interesting. And just kept farming. This irritated the son. The son came out the next day. "Dad, I need you to do things the newer, more efficient, technological way." The dad shrugged his shoulders, kept doing what he's doing. The son brought out a coffin and looked at his father and said, "Dad, if you don't start doing things the new school way, I'm going to put you in this coffin and throw you off the cliff." The dad shrugged his shoulders and laid in the coffin. This infuriated the son. The son dragged his father to the edge of the cliff. "Dad, if you do not start doing things the way they're done today, I'm throwing you off the cliff." The dad said, "My son, do me a favor. Throw me off this cliff, but save the coffin so your son can use it on you." Shout out to Ace Next Gen.
Talofa lava and warm greetings. Thank you for inviting me to the AAPI Strong Conference. More importantly, thank you for your ongoing efforts to break down barriers for our businesses, defeat Asian hate, and keep building resilience for NHPI communities. I appreciate your voice for the AAPI business community, and especially all the grants for small businesses. helping hundreds so far and hundreds more in the future. Thank you for partnering with these businesses and providing them with the resources and knowledge that they can get from access to the national organization. In American Samoa, I suppose just about every business in the islands outside the tuna cannery is in some way an AAPI small business. Wherever our AAPI businesses are located in the country, it's great to know there's a national organization focused on them, informing and facilitating their growth. Through your meaningful efforts, our NHPI young people can be inspired by success stories from our diverse business communities. Congratulations on another great event and another year ahead of putting our small businesses first. God bless. Whaftai soifua maia manuia.
At this time, we'd like to invite President and CEO Chaling Tong of National ACE and Ying McGuire, President and CEO of National Minority Supplier Development, to the main stage. We also would like to invite our National ACE board members, ambassadors, and the following strategic partners, and all we need is one representative to come up to the front stage. ACE NextGen, Asian American Chamber of Commerce, Filipino American Chamber of Commerce of Metro DC, Pacific Islander Knowledge to Action Resources, Alamo Asian Chamber of Commerce, Houston Asian Chamber of Commerce, National Association of Women Business Owners, California Asian Pacific Chamber of Commerce, Asian Corporate and Entrepreneur Leaders, the Center for Asian Pacific American Women, Minnesota Chinese Chamber of Commerce, Chinese Mutual Aid Association, AMWEC, National Capacity, Taiwanese American Professionals of DC, International Leadership Foundation, Carolinas Chinese Chamber of Commerce, the Federation of Philippine American Chambers of Commerce, Island Liaison, and USC Chang General Chamber of Commerce. Today, let's give them a round of applause. Today, Chiling and Ying will be signing together a memorandum of understanding that officially formalizes our national association and acknowledges our commitment to developing opportunities for discussion and exchange and fostering a productive alliance. Together, we are committed to minority business inclusion and advancing equity together.
Good afternoon. Everybody enjoy the lunch? My name is Ying McGuire. I'm the first AAPI CEO of the National Minority Supplier Development Council. We call it NMSDC. And NMSDC was created 50 years ago as a direct result of President Nixon's executive order for racial equity. And we do 4 things: certify minority-owned businesses, including AAPI businesses. We develop them from startup to 10 million, and 50 million, to 100 million, and we have many multi-billion-dollar companies, many of them. And we connect them with the corporate America's opportunities. We have many of you in the room. I see Matt from Toyota's here, many of you in the room. We help them participate in the procurement economy. And finally, we advocate for them with the corporate America, with the federal government, throughout 23 affiliate councils across the United States, with the state and local governments. And our certified MBEs, their collective revenue today is about $260 billion. It's a B. But that's not enough to achieve economic equity. We have an aspirational goal to get to $1 trillion in annual MBE revenue, certified MBE revenue, and we want you all to be part of that $1 trillion. So this afternoon, I'm going to be facilitating a couple of panels, so come join us to learn how you can be that part of that 1 trillion journey. Enjoy the lunch. Thank you.
Please welcome Sandeep Nain.
Well, how awesome was that? How about another big round of applause for the MOU signing, please? Hello, everyone. My name is Sandeep Nain, and I'm so excited to be here as Ambassador of National ACE. It is my pleasure to introduce the next panel of speakers on investing in AAPI business. They are Erika Moritsugu, Deputy Assistant to the President and AA and NHPI Senior Liaison to the White House. Aditi Dassault, Senior Advisor to the Office of the Administrator, U.S. Small Business Administration. Krystal Kai, Executive Director, White House Initiative on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. Michael Negron, Special Assistant to the President for Economic Policy at the White House. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our moderator, Global Client Service Partner with EY and National ACE, incoming Board Chair, Thear Suzuki.
Hello, can you hear me? If you can hear me, clap once. I have some kids at home, so that's how I get their attention. Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much for being with us here today. My name is Thear Suzuki, and as Sandeep shared, I'm a Global Client Service Partner with Ernst & Young. EY, we are a proud platinum sponsor of National ACE year-round, as well as for this particular annual conference. I have the honor of moderating this panel today. But before I do that, I just want to share that Asian business owners and entrepreneurs have a special place in my heart. And that's because my family came to this country in the early 80s as refugees from Cambodia. Do we have any Cambodians in the audience? Woo! Hello! Would love to meet you after this, so come find me. And thank you for serving us today. You know, my mom was an entrepreneur in many regards. She never had an education, grew up as a country girl back in Cambodia, went through the Cambodian genocide. She helped keep our family alive during the killing fields. And when we came to America, she did everything that she could to help us thrive in America. And I know that my story and my family's story is one of many, and many of you are immigrants as well. And I loved what Susan shared this morning, which was that immigrants and refugees are the most creative people because we've had to reinvent ourselves. And isn't that the truth? Each of you should give yourselves a hand of applause. So as we start our panel this afternoon, I would love to just ask a simple question that is not in the script, so I hope you're okay with that. And that is, why have you chosen to do the work that you do today? I know that for all of you, it must be a labor of love, just like it is for all of us in the work that we do to support the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander community. How about we start with you?
Thank you. It's an important question, and it's one that, we don't want to assume what brings us to this work. It's not for wealth building or glamour, this service in the government, but it's a call to service, and it's a part of being both somebody who was brought up with strong Asian values and strong American values, and it embodies everything that brings us, I think, to government service and public service, to be as useful and helpful as we can, but also to bring folks with us, and to always look behind us and look ahead, to make sure that the privilege that we have in serving helps people coming after us, our next gens, and that was a wonderful opening for the luncheon to be celebrating our next gen, but also to honor the struggles and the hardships and the courage of our ancestors.
Aditi Dusal from the Small Business Administration, and my mother is the only person from her family that emigrated from India to the United States, and she will love when I say things like she's one of my favorite people. We don't always have the best relationship, but she is a person who has greatly impacted my life, as well as my father. Like you mentioned, strong Asian values and strong American values from my father's side. And I definitely feel so grateful to be in this opportunity to serve again, having worked in the Obama administration previously and being able to come back again to work in the Biden and Harris administration. It's extremely powerful, and really at the Small Business Administration, getting to talk to business owners regularly and see the way that we help so many more Americans. It's patriotic. It's why I want to be here. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Krystal from the White House Initiative on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. For me, like what Aditi and Erika mentioned, a lot of this work is very deeply personal. I think about my family. I think about my home state of Hawaii, where I grew up, when I am doing this work. And I think it's so important that we, as Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, have a seat at the table, but also have people who are within our government advocating for all of us, and whether that is related to small business and economic development, healthcare, education. There are so many needs that our communities have, and our communities are so diverse. So I think, again, having, just knowing this commitment from the Biden-Harris administration to ensure that we are uplifting equity and ensuring all communities have a seat at the table, have a voice in government, is really what drives me to do the work that I do.
Hi, everybody. Michael Negron. I'm with the White House National Economic Council. I have, my entire career, been in public service of some kind, whether it was serving in the Navy after college, which is how I paid for college. I worked for 2 presidents now. I worked for the mayor of Chicago and the governor of Illinois. And the reason it's really the only track I've ever wanted to be on is that I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for others who viewed public service as a way to make it so that where you start doesn't dictate where you finish in life. My father came from Puerto Rico as a teenager, didn't know any English, never got his high school degree, but was able to provide us with a good life because he had a factory job when factory jobs paid a living wage. My mother came from Guatemala as a teenager, came here undocumented, ultimately was able to stay here, later in life became a public school teacher, and because of their successes and the power of the unions, the power of government support for education, I was able to then be where I am. And so it's always the path I've wanted to be on. It's always the work I've wanted to do. And I'm really happy to be able to do it for this administration and to have it bring me here today. Thank you.
Thank you all for sharing some of your personal stories. I think that's incredibly important as we're about to go into talking about some technical things relating to the important work that this administration is doing to support our community. So my first question is for you, Erika. The Biden and Harris administration has had quite a busy year and an even busier summer with the Infrastructure Law, CHIPS and Science Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act. They each represent major investments in the American economy. Can you speak to what these bills mean to this Asian American, Native American, or I'm sorry, Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander entrepreneurs?
No, that's an excellent question, and I'm really glad to have an excellent answer. Can I just, at the top, thank Chilling for her friendship and her leadership, and Dr. Eng for her leadership, your incoming leadership. And also, I know Daniel thinks that he's behind the scenes, but whenever we think about who is going to make an impact and center our community, it's Daniel Oliver. So thank you for having us here today. Really super excited to talk about the hard work that's gone into a year and a half that y'all didn't see. Michael's seen it. Aditi has seen a piece of it, but it culminated in last month with the signing of the Inflation Reduction Act at the White House. And this is a bill that was a long time in coming, a lot of hard work, a lot of behind-the-scene negotiations, a lot of very serious policy considerations that, now that it is law, will reduce prescription drug costs, will reduce healthcare costs, is going to help families and small businesses, the 2 million small businesses, to reduce costs and lower taxes in important ways. That was not just the promise, but a promise kept by the President and the Vice President from day one. And we were so glad to see that go over the finish line because of what it means for the heart of our economy and our communities, which is the small businesses. In addition to the cost-saving measures that I think have been very, very strongly highlighted, we should note that the President and the Vice President, since day one, have really been committed to shoring up and supporting our small businesses because they recognize that it's the heart and the center of our communities and our economy. And it's led to unprecedented boons, which I'm going to actually let my friend and colleague Michael run through the technical aspects of it. But also, with the right out of the box, the American Rescue Plan, and all of the support and investments that we've made, that the Department of Treasury has expanded and created new programs that are deeply impactful, and I hope that you felt the impact. Because that is part of our role, is to make sure that we don't just roll out a new bill and some new programs, but make sure that they're accessible and understandable and usable, because our actions and our inactions are the measure of our success, and we're accountable to y'all for that. Small Business Administration, I'm going to defer to my colleague and friends at DT to go through some of that, but I mean the Community Navigator program and the investments in the SSBCI programs that Treasury and the SBA both administer is so important. But I want to just say one thing in addition to the stats that I think have been historic in terms of unemployment and new business startups in the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander-owned businesses, is that this boom that we're seeing, these unprecedented historical strides that the data shows, was driven by communities of color and driven by the courageous, imaginative, sweat equity of the folks in this room, and I want to honor that and thank you for the work that you do so that we can continue performing to support you and take the criticisms and the joys and the celebrations with y'all.
Wonderful, thank you. And perhaps maybe can you share with the audience where can they find more information about these acts and really understand what it really means for them?
Well, here I'm going to give a little bit of a shout out to everybody who was on the stage with Chuling and Ying before. Those are ambassadors and the points of access. You don't need to be a well-heeled lobbyist with deep ties in politics to be able to access these. What Krystal and I in particular work on is to make sure that this information is distributed and accessible, both in terms of language but also in terms of cultural competency, to make sure that you have the tools on the ground. The folks who are not just the front line in terms of the impacts that our policies that we roll out are intended to, you're not just community leaders, you're also members of the community. And so that back and forth intake, I think, is really, really important. And Krystal and I work to be accessible where there are questions or where you see gaps. If that information isn't getting out, if the programs aren't having the broad, deep impacts that we intend them to.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'll go to you next, Michael, since she called on you earlier. You serve as a senior advisor to the president and sit on the Economic Policy Council, giving you a unique perspective on how economic policy impacts small businesses. Can you talk about the economic impact that many of the Biden and Harris era policies, such as I mentioned earlier, chips and the, not chips like potato chips, but all caps, and the Inflation Reduction Act will have on the NHPI small business community?
Happy to, Thear. And so I want to also just start by mentioning the work that's been done overall, as well as Erika mentioned some of the data that we've talked about recently. Earlier this year, the president helped release a report that had some analysis behind it that showed that the country is in the midst of a real entrepreneurship boom. And there's a lot of different reasons for it, unprecedented support from government during a pandemic, people kind of being shaken out of their careers and willing to take chances and start new businesses, new opportunities being created and things going remote, or for every challenge, there's always an entrepreneur who's going to figure out a way to start a business based on that challenge. And so what we saw was in 2021, Americans started a record 5.4 million businesses. Small businesses with less than 50 employees created a record 2.8 million jobs. The number of Asian American owned businesses is up 20% compared to pre-pandemic. We see similar numbers for Black owned and Latino owned and Native owned businesses. And so there is a lot of entrepreneurship activity happening, and we want to make sure that we are positioned to support it. And so the president released a four-part strategy that, when you look at it, it's common sense, right? I don't think it represents anything that I don't think anyone here would think about on their own, and that is make sure that businesses can access capital, the capital they need to get started and to grow and expand. Making sure that businesses have access to the types of navigator services and technical assistance they need to get started when they're reaching a milestone. How do I access government help? How do I access other help? The third prong is for when the federal government spends money, let's make sure that small businesses stand to benefit. And so that's in our procurement spending, in infrastructure spending through the bipartisan infrastructure law, research and development spending. There's a program called the Small Business Innovation Research Program that's about to expire, and there's been a big fight in Congress about it, and I think we're getting close to a deal, but that's a program that directs $4 billion in R&D spending to small businesses through grants and contracts. It's a very important program. You might not hear about it a lot, but it's an example of the types of programs that we can support. And then the fourth is tax reform, leveling the playing field for small businesses so that they aren't bearing the burden of large companies that go without taxation, of wealthy individuals who are evading taxes, and that's an area where the Inflation Reduction Act really does a lot of work. And so I'll just go really quickly through them, and I know that some of my colleagues here will probably cover other of these programs, but on capital access, there is a program that I hope you will hear more and more about called the State Small Business Credit Initiative. It is a $10 billion investment from the American Rescue Plan at the Treasury Department, and what that funding does is it allows every state, tribal governments, territorial governments, to use those funds to set up their own loan and venture capital type programs. It's $10 billion. It's supposed to be leveraged. So for every $1 of public money, the state government or the territorial government or the tribal government is supposed to get 10 more in private dollars to match it. So this $10 billion can go really far. Treasury's approved almost 30 of the state programs. States are starting to get money out the door, so you'll be hearing more and more about it, but it's a real opportunity across the country to really revitalize and ensure that there is access to capital going forward. The SBA 7A and 504 programs, we increased the ceiling for those programs by $9 billion, and there's some other reforms underway to make those programs even more accessible. On the technical assistance side, I know Aditi will talk about community navigators. The bipartisan infrastructure law, one thing it did was it made the Minority Business Development Agency permanent, and it elevated its leader to be an Undersecretary of Commerce. It's a big topic this week. It's Med Week, and so hopefully many, if not all of you, are also here to partake in that. But then we also tasked the MBDA with implementing $100 million in Treasury money for technical assistance to support the SSBCI program. So that's another big initiative. On the contracting side, I hope everyone here knows that the President set a goal of increasing contract dollars to small disadvantaged businesses by 50% by 2025. And in 2021, we got off to a good start. We reached a record level of spending on those businesses. We put out disaggregated data, which I know many have looked at and have seen that there are real disparities when you look down at the racial and the ethnic level, and so that's going to keep pressure on us and hold us accountable to make sure that we get those numbers up. We're leading an effort under the bipartisan infrastructure law to make sure that the states and the local governments and the transit agencies that get those dollars, that they also spend those equitably. And then on tax reform, the Inflation Reduction Act has a number of changes within it. This is reported frequently, but it's still shocking every time I read the number. But in 2020, 55 large corporations paid 0 in federal income taxes, which is just it's a shocking number. And so part of what the Inflation Reduction Act will help us do is cut off some of those loopholes. So there's a 15% minimum tax that applies to companies with over $1 billion in revenue. It's only 150 companies that will be affected by it, but it will produce billions and billions in revenue for the federal government to help support these critical investments. There's a surcharge, a 1% surcharge on corporate stock buybacks. You have probably read about this. More and more companies use these buybacks to basically funnel tax-free rewards to shareholders instead of investing those dollars to create jobs or to support innovation. And so this just puts the thumb on the scale a little bit so that more of those dollars get spent creating jobs and supporting communities. And we're doing this while ensuring that no family or small business that makes less than $400,000 a year pays 1 additional cent in federal taxes. So that's a big part of the Inflation Reduction Act. There's other supports in there that will save businesses. There's tax credits for solar panels, tax credits to make your business more energy efficient. Erika mentioned the Affordable Care Act supports. There's 3 million businesses that get premium supports through the Affordable Care Act. Those were going to expire this year. We prevented that from happening, so those savings will continue. And overall, there's $300 billion in investments in a clean energy economy in the Inflation Reduction Act. And when you add that with the CHIPS and Science Act, which has $50 billion to support a local semiconductor industry here in America, and the bipartisan infrastructure law, you're looking at major historic investments in the building blocks of a 21st century economy, strengthening domestic manufacturing, and small businesses will benefit from all of that. And that's a part of this administration's deep commitment to supporting small business. So thanks. That was a lot. Sorry.
That was a lot. And that was, I mean, without a doubt, that is tremendous investment. And I'm glad to know that we have representation to make sure that our community understands everything that's out there and also be able to use our voice to ask more questions about it and take advantage of it. Michael, thank you for that. Krystal, I'll come to you next. And there's this thing called the White House Initiative on Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders. I don't know about you guys, but when I first heard about this several years ago, I was like, what? There's actually a White House initiative focused on our community, which is tremendous. And I think for those who are in and around Washington, this probably needs no explanation for them. But for those of us who are not, can you help share the story of how this came about and what does it mean for our community?
Sure, that's an excellent question. So the White House Initiative on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders has actually existed for over 2 decades. It was first created in 1999 under the Clinton administration and has been reauthorized under every administration, both Democratic and Republican, ever since then. And most recently, under the Biden administration, we were reauthorized last May during Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And for the first time ever, the name Native Hawaiian is explicitly listed in the name. So I think some of you may have worked with prior iterations of the initiative, WIAPI, and now we have the NH in there, so we are calling it WIANPI with the additional letters there. But this initiative is really focused on our executive order that the president signed last May requires us to advance equity, justice, and opportunity for the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community, in line with so many of the other priorities of this administration to center equity in ways that are really historic and have never been done before throughout the entirety of the federal government. And so, our executive order includes a number of various mandates, everything from addressing, of course, the horrific uptick in anti-Asian bias and hate we have seen over the course of the pandemic, to addressing health disparities, economic inequities, educational disparities, as well as promoting things like climate justice and civic engagement. So it's a really broad executive executive order. We are also focused and explicitly written in our executive order are things like language access and data disaggregation. These are not new issues for our community. They have been challenges for a long time, but they are explicitly mentioned. And what I'm really optimistic about is that under this administration, with this focus on equity, we are truly able to see just a strong commitment from so many federal agencies, as well as directly from the White House, to really move this agenda forward. As part of our initiative, we also have a Presidential Advisory Commission. So that includes 25 individuals who are appointed by the President to advise him on various issues. And our commission is actually going to be meeting in DC at the White House next week. And they have an entire subcommittee focused on economic equity. So it's a big priority for our commission. We have a federal interagency working group that we also run to be able to coordinate our federal our policy making, our programmatic efforts, and our outreach throughout the government, and to really to connect local communities with our federal government and with our resources. And lastly, we have a regional network. So that includes federal officials based all across the country who really serve as our boots on the ground to be our messengers. And we have actually been traveling through our White House initiative all across the country. We've been to various cities. Most recently, I was in Arizona, actually, in Scottsdale, where I saw many of you at the Cell conference. And we have also, Erika and I have been traveling all across the country because we know that, as much as it's, all of the really amazing things that Michael mentioned, literally trillions of dollars, historic once-in-a-generation investments. We're realizing, though, that it's, we really need to be able to connect with our community leaders, not just via Zoom and doing, hundreds of webinars, but we need to actually go out into the community to make sure that our small business owners, our business leaders, our community leaders are aware of the resources that we have. So that is a really big part of our work and why we have been traveling more as pandemic conditions have allowed us to actually go out into the community, because we know that so many of our community leaders really do need that in-person touch and that engagement, and also making sure we're providing resources in a way that's culturally and linguistically accessible to our community, given how diverse our needs are, and the fact that simply pushing out a fact sheet or posting something on a website is not enough to be able to get information about grants and opportunities and just contracting opportunities. Like, we need to really do more to ensure that our leaders, our business leaders, our small business owners know about these. And so we are really hoping to serve as that bridge. And a vital part of that is all of you here in this room. I mean, we have so many tremendous leaders in the community represented here today. And I think what we are hoping to do is making sure that, everything you learned today on this panel and through the continued engagement with us, that you are able to then take that back to your local communities, through your chambers, through your various outreach mechanisms, to make sure that we are sharing this information, and that Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders can take advantage of, again, the trillions of dollars that have been invested into our economy, that are going out and that are available. So.
Thank you for that. My aspiration is to be able to say Asian American, Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders just as well as you, can. I'm getting used to it. That's fantastic. Aditi, I'd love to come to you next. And you're the senior advisor to the administration for the SBA. Can you discuss what resources and opportunities the SBA offers and how our community, business owners and entrepreneurs, can benefit from them? And then, to follow up on that, as a small business policy expert, which sounds really cool,
thank you,
by the way, what do you think what do you think is historic about the current moment regarding federal investment in small businesses, and how does our community ensure that they are not excluded from these monumental opportunities? Two questions there.
I'll combine them. I appreciate being the last one to have a set question at least, because I do think I pair well with dessert and coffee. So if you've been holding yourself back, please go forward with that at this point. And I'm always appreciative to have Michael on a panel with me to run through a lot of the statistics that SBA has focused on, because I get to then kind of stretch a little and talk about really this historic moment that the Small Business Administration and overall the Biden-Harris administration have helped us navigate through as a nation. And I think that it is an incredible moment that we are in this kind of pivot. Some of us, might feel a little soon to be out here maskless or in a room with this many people. Some of us have been waiting to do this for a very long time, but it's great to see you and do business with you. And that's what the Small Business Administration wants to do. So we had a hard pivot 2.5 years ago, just like everybody else, where every single type of business all of a sudden needed help on a magnitude that had never really been contemplated previously. And over, through several different programs, which have helped literally millions of small businesses, Paycheck Protection, COVID Idle, shuttered venues, we've had a lot of opportunity to touch American small business owners in ways that we haven't been able to before. And so the Small Business Administration is out there as a name in many more households than before the pandemic. And we'd like to stay there, frankly, because I think we hopefully have built some good relationships with the entrepreneurial community, and we will continue to pivot into this new normal and would like to continue to be relevant and helpful to you as you move forward and figure out what life after COVID looks like. And as my colleagues have shared, I'm very lucky to be in Washington and be able to email these folks directly and be like, hey, what exactly was that number? Or can I get a connection at another agency doing great work on the AAPI community, NHPI community? I can do that. But what about you at home, from the far corners that you've come from? Well, we have resources for you too, and I think that was part of the question. So to talk about that, we do have our brick and mortar. We have our district offices, we have our small business development centers, we have our veteran business opportunity centers, our women's business centers. They are all acronyms, I can say them all quickly. But the bottom line is we have community-based resources for our small business owners across the country. They get support from the Small Business Administration in terms of finance, they get resources in terms of educational materials, programming, all sorts of things to help your company grow and develop in the way that it needs to. And we've really heard the call over the past few years that we need to do it in a way that's more accessible, that has cultural competence, has that language access, and we are doing more and better with that through our Community Navigators program. So if you've talked to the SBA 5 years ago, 15 years ago, however long ago it was that you were thinking about getting started and you haven't since, today is a good day to check out sba.gov once again and see what's happening. We have a really great tool that is just a zip code lookup basically, and it will point to basic, all those different acronyms that I talked about that are in your local community. We are still doing a ton online, and our district offices are starting to reopen and starting to do in-person events again, but we are still Zooming, we are still Teamsing, and that's actually really great because you can find even more relevant to you information. If you're in California, it's a big state, you're in the LA area, but it turns out the district office near San Francisco is doing an event, you can probably log into that virtually. That's okay, we won't mind, it's one country. And as a consequence, you might be able to get that access to financing or opportunities that you didn't know that you could get to. We do tons of contracting programming, we do tons of programming around disaster readiness and preparedness, which, we just kind of went through a disaster and probably more are coming, and we want to be able to partner with you to make sure that you're ready for whatever comes next. So it is a really good moment to, like I said, revisit sba.gov, revisit your local district office, your SBDC, or wherever, and it is a really great moment to be involved with organizations like the National ACE because, well, as we talked about, the leadership has our numbers, and we certainly do love to show up, but we can therefore be more accessible to you through organizations like this. I know Administrator Guzman is going to be at the dinner this evening, and we'll talk about SBA's accomplishments. She was here from day one, navigating through those programs and PPP forgiveness and repositioning some programs to make them more effective. She'll tell you the rundown on that, but more importantly, I hope that she'll be able to share with you her vision for us to pivot and continue to be relevant to you, and more so relevant. You are community I obviously value, but she hired me and many others in our agency because she knows that this community is one that is important, it is industrious, it's going to get the job done, and we appreciate the opportunity to work with you.
Thank you very much to each of you. And I have a last question as we are running towards the end of lunch here, and this is for each of you. You each work within the administration that has made historic commitments to expanding racial equity and has also enacted historic laws. Can you tell us what you have found to be the most critical components of these laws to furthering equity? I know that might sound a little hard because there's a lot there. Furthermore, we'll be watching the impact of these laws unfold for decades to come. What does success look like to you? Erika, we'll start with you.
So one of the things that's been really striking to me, and I forgot to introduce myself at the top, but Erika, I'm the senior liaison to the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities and one of the president's deputies. And if you don't know what WIAMPI means, then you definitely don't know what this job looks like because it never existed before. It was created for the first time ever in the Chief of Staff's office in March of 2021, and I was appointed in April 2021. And the reason why I emphasize that is because intentional inclusion has been a hallmark of not just what we do, but how we do it. And it includes representation at the highest levels of government and at every level below it. And that's so important in designing, but also implementing, and then also course correcting a lot of these kind of cornerstone priorities that you've seen on cable TV, because we know that these policies are only going to be effective and they're only going to impact the communities that we mean to center if we are informed by the community. And if we're looking and seeing and hearing and valuing every corner of our communities, and if we're communicating it back out. And that's one of the reasons why diversity, I'm a very proud member of the most diverse administration in history, where we've got heads of agencies for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders, including economic agencies, which is the bread and butter of small businesses, but also the kitchen table issues. And it's more and more every day to bring to bear like this broader landscape of where great ideas come from, where innovations come from, what kind of tensions need to be in the room to disrupt things so that it's not just business as usual. Just this morning, Ronnie Chatterjee was appointed to lead our work on the CHIPS and Science Act out of the White House, and he was the top economist at the Department of Commerce, and he's going to be leading this work not just as an Asian American economist, but as an American, and he's going to have a seat at that table. And it's that kind of inclusion of voices and diversity of views that I've really seen the measure of success. I think that we've had many measures of success, and there's hard work ahead of us, and I think that's going to be the key to success.
Thank you.
Okay. I would say it's something I say to business owners all the time in order to be successful in federal contracting, because that's really my home is federal contracting. It's a weird home. It's okay. But you need tenacity, and I think that's also true as us in working in these positions. We love service. It's very easy to get out of bed, especially if you're only working still at your computer. You don't actually have to commute. But that tenacity thing is really, it's both a good thing and a bad thing, you know, because you need it every day, and that's kind of the tough part. But the thing that I have particularly loved about the work that is happening in this administration, particularly around the issues of this community, is that continuity, that there has been work being done with this since the late 90s in a very thoughtful way. When I rejoined the administration, or when I joined this administration 6 months ago, some of the issues, of course, they're still continuing, but there has been progress made on each and every one of them through a very difficult period. And so I'm excited to rejoin this and see this historically diverse top level, and see that come down through to the working levels of these different agencies, and certainly in the work that we're doing. It was nice to be a part of talking the talk, and it's even more exciting to be walking the walk. And I feel like that's something that we're doing in this administration that is super exciting for me.
I just want to echo, what has already been said, and I think just, again, the fact that we have such a historic and diverse administration from the very top. We have 2 Asian Americans in the cabinet, our Vice President and Ambassador Catherine Tai, who is our U.S. Trade Representative and is also one of our co-chairs for the White House Initiative. Just from the top down, as Erika mentioned, and everywhere in between, we have such significant representation. And as our head of the director of the White House Office of Presidential Personnel, who is responsible responsible for all of us being where we are as political appointees. Gautam Raghavan, I think many of you know as well, Asian American, and is like what he often says is people are policy, and that's true. I think having us, in the positions we are in is not just for the picture, to have a diverse picture, but it's actually people who bring experiences, who understand, diverse communities and are able to really bring that to bear in terms of the policy making, the programmatic work that we are doing, the outreach and engagement we are doing in a very intentional way to make sure that communities that have not always been included or had a seat at the table do have a seat at the table under this administration. So I think, again, that commitment to equity, that really very intentional engagement is something that I am really proud of. And I think in terms of success, what you had mentioned, what does that look like in the future, or how do we measure the success of these really historic investments, these historic laws that have been passed? I think we will see the impacts of this for generations to come. We're already starting to see some of the immediate impacts, but just knowing those lasting investments, being able to really ensure that our communities, again, beyond this administration, will be able to benefit from the economic investments, the really intentional, again, engagement, and hopefully some of the policy, making that we're doing. I think we didn't have a chance to go into all of those pieces, but Michael and Aditi really did go through so many of the economic programs that will really help our small businesses and our larger community in general to succeed. So I think, that is something we're just very proud of, and hope that that moving forward that you will begin to see some of the immediate impacts, but also, like I said, those longer term impacts that we'll see decades from now that started under this administration because of the really significant work being done.
So I was also going to quote Gautam's "People are policy lines." They had it written right here, and I just crossed it off. So I only hit two more things that weren't raised. And so number one, it's important that when you're making when we're considering policy proposals that we aren't making them in a hermetically sealed dome. And so community engagement is important. That's why my colleagues here are so critical to this. I know that when, if Erika comes knocking and wants me to meet with folks to talk about legislation, that's an important part of the process, right? You have to understand how different policy, whether it's legislative or executive, how it affects different communities, and so that's critical. And then the second thing I would point to is just we have so many interesting things that we can do with data. There's so much out there. Just having been in administration before, having worked at other levels of government, we know so much more now about how policies play out than I think we did 10, 15 years ago. And so understanding that can help us be smarter about how we design it. I'll just mention the example again of a year ago we put out this procurement data that showed the race and ethnicity of our contractors. And there are, that is enabling people within the administration to look at it and see, are there certain sectors, are there certain types of businesses where if we wanted to strengthen equity, we should focus in these key areas, right? And the data allows you to do that, and it allows you to do that across the board. And so that's why, under the President's equity executive order, one of the initiatives coming out of that is a data working group, right? To make sure that we have a better sense of how we're affecting communities with our policies. And so I think that's a really key part. It's one you're not going to read about on a daily basis, but it is an important one, and I think it's a way not only for us to be smarter about what we're doing, but when it's public, it allows for accountability. So, thank you.
Thank you to each of you. I think we all would agree that this has been both, I would say, informative as well as a thoughtful discussion. And the other thought that came to mind for me, and I don't know about for you guys as well, but that is that real work is getting done. And all of you are putting in so much time and energy and investment, and you truly care about this community and the work that you do. So for that, thank you very much for your hard work, and thank you very much for being here with us today.
Please welcome back to the stage the President of Essential Technologies and National ACE Ambassador, Sandeep Nain.
All right. So similar to Don's story about Temple of Shaolin, I have a story when I was getting trained at Temple of Shaolin. Just kidding. That concludes our lunch plenary. Before we take our 15 minutes and go into the breakout sessions, I would like to remind everyone of our silent auction that's happening throughout the conference. Please consider bidding for items or making a donation to National ACE. Please also take the opportunity to network, but please watch the time as the breakout sessions starts promptly in 15 minutes. Thank you.